Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. Today, I have Cassandra Pollock joining me as my guest on our roundtable of disability stories. Cassandra is going to be talking about homelessness and her recent journey through that path. And yeah, definitely, it's definitely a story that I encourage everyone to pull up a chair and watch the live episode as she tells her story of what she's gone through. I mean, Cassandra, I don't envy homelessness to anybody. I've been through it myself. So Sonia and I had our ordeal that we went through, but it's nothing in comparison to what you went through, I'm sure. And so, anyone listening to the podcast today, yeah, I mean, definitely take notes of this because it can happen to anybody at any time in life. Circumstances change. With that being said, Cassandra, it's all yours.
Well, I'd like to start because I keep saying I haven't experienced this in my adult life.
Mhm.
As a teenager, I did experience a couple years of homelessness and being on the street. And that was when I experienced, and to give you background, I have complex PTSD.
Mhm.
It's from trauma throughout my life, even before that episode. But that was absolutely some the worst violence I experienced in my
Mhm.
life was during that time of homelessness as a youth. But I was also able-bodied, and that was another thing. So it was, you know, PTSD is not something that goes away. And I have not been re-traumatized or triggered like that in I, I can't even tell you. I don't remember a time. Like I had multiple days where I was at the point of I'm on the edge of a nervous breakdown. I can't take any more of what's going
Mhm.
on. Like this is too much. And it started with I've been living I'm a disability advocate. I'm also a housing is a human right advocate. And and there's some irony in that as well, because I was already had a couple projects that I had been, in the planning stages or working on to address the homelessness situation. Based on ideas I had about how to, as a, solutions to address it. And I had to put all that on hold because I'd been living in the same place for 8 years. My landlord and I had a good relationship. Um, and then he got married last year, had a baby in July. And, you know, it's funny because a couple months earlier is like, yeah, maybe in a couple years kind of thing. And then the baby came and they had family coming and he just said, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to give you lots of time. He gave me 5 months verbal notice. Um, and he gave me the proper 90-day written notice, but he gave me 5 months notice verbally. And I started looking right away. And I'm already facing challenges. First of all, my 8 years of my life is packed into this place.
Mhm.
I lost a lot of I lost a lot of muscle and different things during the whole COVID. I'd already been isolated for a couple years before COVID, like horribly socially isolated, like not talking, having normal human interactions for months at a time and stuff. And then COVID came. And then my car wasn't on the road. I had trouble getting out of the house. Nothing was close. So I was already experiencing hardship from all of these things. And then, he was trying to be generous and give me time. And we both knew it was a tough market, tougher than anything either of us had seen. He had other places he rented, plus he also um, acted as a property manager for his dad and stuff like that. And so we both knew it was a super tight market, but I don't think either of us actually really truly understood just how bad it was. I had not only was my landlord going to give me a great reference, one of the things he said to me, he goes, you should be able to find a place, no problem. And this is a few months in. He goes, you tick off all the check marks that I look for in a tenant. He goes, you're not a party animal. You don't make a lot of noise. You're quiet. You're not wrecking the place. Your rent's on time. You check off all the check that what I look for in a tenant.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had like two amazing references. A friend of mine that recently got elected as an MLA. Also had a friend that works for a nonprofit legal service. He's a lawyer. I mean, these are the kinds of character people that I worked with as an advocate. They're all, like that are also advocates that are well known. You know what I mean? Like that had really excellent reputations that were willing to be character references for me. Because a lot of people were asking not just they wanted character references as well. And so I don't think I know people that are in better socioeconomic circumstances than my own that probably don't have the kind of references that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking, okay, like who's going to say no to me? Mm-hmm. And so I started looking right away. And I'll tell you, the first month or two, I couldn't actually I couldn't even get a viewing. Like I was on Rent Faster, I was on Kijiji, I was on Craigslist, I was on Facebook Marketplace. I tried other ones, but what I found is as I started trying more and more different rental sites, they were just duplicates of what was already on all the other ones I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, okay, I mean, I even had situations where I had a viewing with somebody, and then I'm on another site and I'm sending out this thing and they're like, oh, I think we already have a viewing. We met on this site.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that going on. But the first month and a half or so, month and a half, I couldn't even get a viewing. I couldn't even get anybody to respond. And I was already starting to get worried, the fact that I couldn't get a response, because I was literally getting up in the morning, having my coffee and spending 3 to 4 hours going through all these sites and replying to them. And then, some are like email only, some are like, oh, text only, some are like call only. So you have to navigate all of that. And I have barriers to email and texting because of, I have multi-level spinal cord compression in my neck with root nerve impingement. Like I take medication, because if I don't take the medication, I can't hold a pen. Mm-hmm. And my hands shake like I got Parkinson's. I don't. It's from the nerve thing and the compression. And so I have all that going on, and then it's hard. So emailing, I don't have the proper technology, so emailing is difficult. I had to take the time to write out one email with all the information that most people were looking for in an email, and then just copy and paste it. Unless it was Rent Faster, because in Rent Faster you can store it and then just keep replying. But the other sites I had to just copy and paste. So this is what I was spending my mornings doing, like with my coffee, was 3 to 4 hours of this. And so for the first month and a half, not to get responses and not being able to get a viewing was scary in itself, because I was starting to get worried. And then at about the 2-month mark, all of a sudden the floodgates open, and all of a sudden I was getting all kinds of viewings. And here's the thing: every single landlord that I spoke to told the same stories. They were overwhelmed. Some of them put an ad up and had to shut it down within a day or two, because they were being so overwhelmed with the amount of people wanting to see that suite that they just couldn't handle the volume. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them would, and some people were able to manage 2 or 3 days. It depended, but you know what I mean? Like they were, a lot of them were doing, okay, we're going to do viewings on these 2 days, and then we'll take applications. So they were getting, some of them were getting, 100, some of them they're getting, 200 or 300 responses.
Whoa.
To an ad. and then on top of it, they were getting people that were like offering them, not only did they have like cash in hand for their first and last month's rent, or security deposit and first month's rent, they also had they also were offering 6 months to a year up front. Some people were offering more rent than what the landlords were asking.
Wow.
And every single landlord that I actually spoke to was telling the same stories.
Yeah.
And I walked into viewings. There was one viewing actually just down the road from where I'm at, and I was up visiting my friend who also lives in this park, and it just popped up. Like I literally caught it, like it had just posted, and I'm like, oh, that's so close to you. I said, let's try this, and he says, oh, can you come right now? And I'm like, yeah. I headed down there. Well, that guy, look, he had just posted it, and when I got there, he was leaning back and he was just like deep breaths and heaving, and just like he goes, I can't believe how, like, the response I'm getting. It's so overwhelming, and just so, and like you could tell he was overwhelmed. Like he just put and he was just inundated, and he was just he's overwhelmed. And now a lot of them, they're good people, and now they're in the position of they're hearing desperate people. Like they all told me that everybody's so desperate. Yep. Like they all said that, and they're having to make the decision of which desperate person they're going to give a home to and take out of housing precariousness. On top of their normal wanting to vet, and do you know what I mean? They're having like there's this
agonized.
Like some of them were truly agonized because they knew whoever they chose, somebody else that was in need, that maybe even a good tenant.
Such a decision to make, when it comes down to it. I mean, that many applicants, and really having to narrow it down to one person out of like hundreds, or and
and I even had landlords saying, like, we don't really, that we've been offered more rent than we're asking, but we don't actually care about getting more rent. We just want a really good tenant.
Reliable.
And so there's a lot of them that they genuinely, they just wanted a good tenant that they could rely on. But they had so many to choose from that, you know what I mean? And so it's just crazy. And I was just looking up some stats in Calgary, and like they did I think it was University of Calgary. I don't know. I can't remember. It was in the Calgary. I think it was the University of Calgary or someplace like that. They did a study. They used the 2016 census because I guess the numbers for the 2021 were unreliable. But they did it it was 40,000 Calgarians in 2016 were at risk of homelessness.
Oh, wow.
There was some new stats that came out. And right now, I mean, the people that did those stats said, we know that 7 years later, it's much worse than it was then. And now we're looking at there was another stat they quoted, something like 85,000 households just in Calgary alone are facing housing precarity. Like they are struggling to pay rent and maintain housing.
That's nuts. Yeah,
I know. And Calgary is a city of just over 2 million.
Yeah. I wanted to just pause here just for a moment.
Or just over 1 million, sorry.
Yeah.
Just over 1 million people.
I wanted to pause just for a moment because we have somebody new on the panel today. So we have Mary Jean Belanger. She's just joined the panel today. So I wanted to make sure we introduce her before we get too carried away. Plus also I wanted to make the point that MJ, our good friend MJ, has sends his congratulations as well that you have your place. He just messaged me and he
thanks, MJ.
Said pass congrats on.
Well, and I don't want to take, but I do want to get through some of the thing, like
Yeah.
that's just the beginning. Like I'm just
Yeah.
laying you the groundwork.
Yeah.
Because there's other issues that came up, right? Like of course my landlord's looking at me at some point. Like I literally got to October, and I'm like, I remember looking at my landlord, and I had to tell him, like, we met out in the yard, and I'm like, hey, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I've been looking like crazy, and not only that, I was having trouble packing because I physically couldn't pack and lift boxes and move them around. So that was also an issue. So I'm trying to do both things. So with my disabilities, and there was no help to help me pack. I was suggested to me by my AISH worker. And now my AISH worker is lovely. I want to say he's lovely, but he is just the frontline guy that has to pass down the policies that are being administered by his higher ups.
Right. Of course.
Right. And so, I want to make clear that when I'm saying my workers, I'm not putting the blame on him, because I understand the position he's in. But like it was suggested to me that, call a social worker. And I'm like, I already know that there's no service out there that will help. In AISH, they are trained in social work, but they don't actually do. They're just financial administrators, the way that it's set up for AISH out here. It's not like PWD where it's they're just they're just benefits administrators. They don't actually do any social work.
Mary Jean was smiling and shaking her head.
I know.
As you were saying that, I just wanted to
make
a note of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and I'm looking at, I'm going, I already know all the services and I know there's nothing, but okay. So I did. I called up 211. I called up the women. I called up a lot of different places. Even my home care nurse had a social worker come to my home. And I'm like, okay, so my worker says, I should try to find, ask one of you guys, is there somebody out there that does volunteer work that will help me pack my stuff?
Yeah.
And of course they're like looking at me like deer in the, we've never heard of that. Okay, we can check. If there's anything out that, you know what I mean? And then they're getting back to me and telling me what I already know.
Exactly.
But I'm asking because I want to say, I don't want to come back and say, oh, I just know this, because that never goes over well. I did the legwork, even though I knew it was futile, because I just wanted to be able to say, okay, I did that. And they told me what I already told you.
It's like little check marks already know, but
right.
Refresh
and so I'm getting nervous as it's getting closer. And I actually went in. I had just been at a town hall. I went to a town hall that was organized through the Women's National Housing and Homelessness Network. They arranged a town hall at our Calgary Women's Center with the Federal Housing Advocate. And there was frontline service workers as well as individuals that were either experiencing homeless or had experienced homeless or were facing had some kind of lived experience with housing parity. And so, I attended this and I heard the stories. Like, I'm in the middle of a move and I hadn't lost that much hope yet. But when I'm listening to the frontline workers of every frontline agency that deals with women and homelessness in some way or another, and they're telling these horrific stories about first of all, the volumes of people reaching out to them, but also the fact that the fact that they can't even get people in shelter beds.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? Like, they're like, we can't. And I'm like, and I'm hearing these stories, but when I was getting nervous and I was looking for a couple services, I went in to the Women's Center. I kind of thought I knew the answer, but I thought, well, maybe they, if it's a one-on-one, maybe they'll have something that, and so I said, well, look, they said, suggested all the things I had done. So I was already on Calgary housing. I had done absolutely everything. I did a whole bunch of different doctor's notes for different things about my different conditions to raise my priority. I had my my notice to vacate, had everything in there to raise my priority as much as possible. The problem was, and they told me over and over, there's nobody moving. We've only got this many, and even though your priority is right up there, we need somebody to move.
Yeah.
And nobody's moving.
Oh.
And I was on, there's other that are income restricted places. So I was on all kinds of subsidized lists. And then they're saying, we'll try, like, we've got some housing that deals specifically with, accessible, and people just, they're like, oh, have you tried Norfolk? Have you tried Horizon? Well, I was calling these places. So I went, because a lot of them need referrals, but I just said, okay, I'm just going to call them up individually, because the referrals were going nowhere. Like, I'm asking, well, you're a referring partner. Can you refer me to this? And I'm getting nothing. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So I start calling them up individually. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter whether I was at the Women's Center, I was calling 211, I was talking to a social worker through AISH, whether I was talking to somebody at, any of the numerous places, including the individual housing places that I'm calling up. And what I'm getting is, we're just so sorry. We're just so sorry. We just don't have anything. We're just so sorry. That's all I was getting over and over. And then AISH is telling me to call the places that I've already been calling.
Yeah.
Like 211 is calling me back, and I'm doing all this. So I phoned up. I'm like, okay, this is going nowhere. I call up Minister Jason Nixon's office. He's the Minister of Community and Social Service. Mm-hmm. And I call up his office, and the first thing they do is they pass me to, they're like, oh, they had a special department that dealt with calls to do with homelessness and something else. I can't remember. And they're like, well, we'll pass you on to one of them. It's just social workers on the line. And I'm talking to the guy that they passed me on to.
Yeah.
And we're going over all the resources, and I'm like, we're going down the same checklist, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, and he's like, well, you've done all of that. And he goes, and actually, about resources I didn't even know about. Know more. He goes, you know more about what's out there than I do. He goes, I honestly don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. Right? Wow. Sorry. And so I'm like, so then I call Nixon's office again. And I call up Nixon's office again. And I said, look, you passed me on to this department. They literally told me I know more about what's out there than them, and I've done everything that they would tell me. So I said, what I really need to do is I just want to talk to somebody in Minister Nixon, either Minister Nixon himself, if he could have a conversation, but if that's not going to happen, somebody directly in his office, if somebody could call me back. And I'm not expecting to get a call back, by the way, because since our new premier has been in, I mean, even under Jason Kenney, at least you got a call back. At least you got casework when Jason Kenney was in for all my complaints about him. But with Smith in, it's just toxic. Like, you call up a minister's office, it's horrible. So I'm calling, I'm talking to her, and when she calls me back, I'm like, oh, I'm being very gracious. I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful that you called me back, and thank you so much. And that's how I start off the conversation. And she's just ice cold. Like, you can just feel the ice on the other end of the line. And I'm like, and so I'm just going on, and I'm just like telling her my story.
Yeah.
With the purpose, it's not just about me. When I'm telling my story, it's not just about me. I'm trying to get the Minister of Community and Social Services, who's also in charge of housing, by the way, in Alberta, because they combine those two now.
Interesting.
And I'm trying to alert them, like, this is my personal story. This is what's happening. And it's not just happening to me. Like, there's got to be more you can do, is kind of the tone. So this is why. But I haven't even gotten to the ask part yet. I'm just telling my personal story about everything I've done, everything I've personally done to try to find myself housing.
Mhm.
And I get to the part where I go into the women's center, and I had called 211 and I had called all these other agencies. I get to that part and I'm like, they told me that if I can't find housing, they can't even get me into a homeless shelter because they're all full. And she says to me in this tone, "That's not true."
Oh
And
my,
I'm like,
that's
"Excuse
terrible.
me?" I'm like, "So you're telling me that every frontline worker that deals with this every single day is lying to me?" "Oh, I wouldn't say anybody's lying." "Well, that's what you just said. You said it wasn't true. You're saying what these people are telling me that working it day in, day out, that what they're telling me isn't true, but you're saying that you're not saying they're lying. Which is it?"
Yeah.
Well, she didn't like that.
Oh.
She starts talking, she starts interrupting me and talking over me and screaming about all the millions of dollars they're supposed to be throwing at expanding the direct rent supplement, at repairing these units with Calgary Housing and Savita that have gone in disrepair because of lack of funding, that they've supposedly throwing millions at. They keep screaming these numbers at me, and about housing that's going to be built in 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, a bunch of red.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, so I start screaming back.
It doesn't solve the problem now. Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
screaming like yelling, screaming like angry.
Oh.
I'm just raising my voice because she's talking over me. So
Yeah.
you want to scream stats over me? I'm like, what about tomorrow? What about today? What about yesterday? What about last week?
Yeah.
What about last month? And she just keeps screaming numbers, and I'm screaming,
yeah.
What about today? You know, what
Yeah.
are we doing to
I don't
fix
want to hear
the
about housing in a
situation?
year from now. I want to hear about housing
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Like,
What are we doing to the fix right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, as far as Jason, you know, like that not being true, like, well, Jason, he tours these places all the time. It's like, so he goes on a tour and a photo op, and
Yeah.
that means he knows better than the frontline workers that are actually working in those places.
Yeah. The lived experience. Yeah.
And the other thing that really frustrated me was the fact that when you're talking about shelters, you have to fit into criteria, right? And the bulk of women's shelters are not to address homelessness. They're to address domestic violence.
Yeah.
And the
Right.
ones that are addressing homelessness, who are they geared towards? Single parents, single women with children. If you don't have a child and you're not facing domestic violence, trying to
Right.
find a shelter, there's like one or two maybe, and they're all full.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing, like, or addiction. And I'm not facing, so I'm not
Yeah.
dealing with addiction. I'm not fleeing domestic violence.
Yeah.
My children are grown,
Yeah.
and there's nothing
Yeah. You need to fit
that action.
You need to fit in a
And-
smaller and smaller box. It's like, do you fit in this small box? Do you fit in this small box? You know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
telling me, you know, and there were times when, you know, sometimes some shelters were able to say, well, we don't normally take this type of person, but because this is a special extra circumstance, we might be able to accommodate a certain, but that can't even happen. They're actually making the criteria are getting tighter. There was 55 there's 55 plus housing, like subsidized housing, right?
Mhm.
Well, all that 55 plus that's been around forever, I went to call them, they've all raised their criteria to 60.
Oh.
Now
wow.
you have to be 60 because the demand is so much, they had to narrow the criteria. So they did it by saying, okay, we can't do 55 plus, it's 60 plus.
Oh.
So
now that waiting list is now even longer and longer.
right, it's like they're getting, like, it's just crazy, like, and they're getting hundreds of more applicants
Yeah.
per month to Calgary Housing and Savita, which is the Edmonton equivalent, than they used to. And nobody's moving because there's no place to move to. And on top of it, this is the same government that have been doing these ads in BC and Ontario saying, Alberta is calling, it's so much cheaper to live here, but failing to tell everybody that, oh, but we actually are struggling because we don't have enough infrastructure, not just housing, but infrastructure is lacking to care for the people that are already living here.
Oh,
and now we're just, somebody said the stat, and I wish I could remember who it was and where it was. I couldn't find something like 75 people per day moving to Alberta from just BC and Ontario. That doesn't include immigration. That doesn't include refugees from
interprovincial
wars like Ukraine, just interprovincial. And I'm like, and where did you think they were going to live? I talked to an international couple just before I ended up in the hotel, and they told me they were leaving, and I'm like, why are you leaving? They go, highly skilled worker, by the way, right? They say they need highly skilled workers, right? He's like, I can't find a job, and the rents are just too high. It's cheaper for me to go back to India.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're keep going on about all the people coming here, but I'm starting to hear more and more. So I'm trying to, so this is some of the stuff that was happening. And then it got to the point I had an MLA's office that, because I was literally, I talked to them. I wrote a letter to the mayor's office. They passed a thing in city council. The mayor put a motion forward on the city council floor to say that they were going to open up, as a part of their homeless strategy, they were going to open up city land to put up some temporary modular homes, but just for families. And I said, I talked to one city councilor that I went to an online session he had about, what are the next steps now that they've approved this strategy, this housing strategy. And what I said to him is, just like I wrote to the mayor, I go, but here's my problem. Yes, there are families that are facing housing precarity. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing something about it. I said, but single person households are more than 2 times as likely, not 2 times as likely, more than 2 times as likely to face core housing need than households with more than one person. And that includes single parent households.
Exactly.
I said, so why do we keep putting resources at that to the exclusion? I mean, the reason that single person households are more than 2 times as likely to face core housing need is because multiple levels of government, from municipal to provincial to federal, have completely ignored single person households. And when you go into those housing encampments, are you seeing families? You're seeing single person households.
Yep.
And they're growing. And it's not because everybody has addiction. Those people, there was just an article on CBC about two income households, 2 income working households that are living in hotels and in campgrounds because they can't find housing that they can afford. I'm on AISH, and how am I supposed to find housing I can afford? Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
And so this MLA writes this letter to, and they write the letter and they say, hey, you know what? We're going to, we want to help you. So they decided they wrote a letter to the minister's office on my, going over, asking for things like, well, could you put her up in a hotel? Could you do this? One of the things was about this. It used to be they would give you a security deposit and it would be the full security deposit. They changed it to only $380 they will give for it. And the thing is, the law in Alberta is that landlords can charge a full month's rent.
Mm-hmm.
So where am I renting a place for 380 other than Calgary housing, like public housing?
Yeah.
And that I can't get into. And I, and then they were like, well, if you take the 380, then you don't have to pay that back. But we will cover the whole thing. But if we cover the whole thing, you have to pay the whole thing back.
Oh, wow, that's terrible.
And so these are the different things. So the MLA wrote, I get a call from my workers supervisor, who I honestly wanted to strangle. I just felt like he was mocking me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he, like, as if I didn't know, like, I'm a 2-year-old. I don't know how to manage my life and look for an apartment. Like, not like a 56-year-old woman that's raised a child into adulthood.
It's gaslighting, right?
Right? Like you're talking to me like,
talking
and
down.
and he's asking me questions because, my car was off the road for 2 years. I still had the car. I just couldn't get it on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get to doctor's appointments. So and he's asking me, well, I thought you didn't have a car. I said, I never said I did not have a car. I said I couldn't afford to put my car on the road, and therefore I had no transportation.
Yeah, there's a big difference there.
Right. And I can't take transit, and on and on. And and so he's picking that apart. And then he's like, and then he's telling me like, so what does he do? Well, we're having this conversation, which I won't get into the full thing on the phone. He's looking on Rent Faster and all these sites, and he's going, but there's lots of places.
Yep, heard that line before. I've heard that line before.
I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, I'm almost not breathing, by the way, at this point. I'm like, really? I said, so have you called them? Have you tried to set up a viewing for one of them? Because of course, this is what I've been doing every day.
Yeah.
For 6 or 7 months at that point, I'd been doing it every day.
Exactly.
And he, you know what I mean? So I know, like, there's a handful of new places every day.
Oh, yeah.
And I've already called everything within my budget. They also set a criteria that they would not pay for my movers unless I was moving into a place that was accessible for me. Yeah. For me, that just means no stairs or only a couple stairs. Mm-hmm. But they were refusing to pay unless, right? And so I'm like, and this is the guy that made that decision, right? Mm-hmm. That's passed down to my worker. So I've got him on the phone and he's telling me there's lots of places. And he said, well, this place and it's this much. And I'm like, I said, how many stairs does it have?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you called it? Are you sure it's still available?
That reminds me of...
have you tried...
Reminds me of Dan, because Dan always says, like, show me your receipts. Like, I want to see proof. Like, he's always talking about, like,
right.
But if you're going to talk smack, like, I want to see receipts, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and of course I'm getting more and more upset because I'm literally, I'm in fear. I'm being triggered. I have a big part of my PTSD is the fact that the only time in my life I was homeless as a youth, it was when I experienced the most violence I've ever experienced and the worst violence I've ever experienced in my life. Mm-hmm. And you are, so my anxiety is already through the roof because now I'm also disabled and I'm like, I won't survive out there.
And he's like mocking.
And he's... And he's, well, I don't know. It felt like, I don't know. I think he just has a voice that sounds like he's mocking you. It might
or more like a condescending, But
it's the fact that he's like, oh, there's lots. It's like, and so when I'm telling them this and he has the gall to say, well, it's not my job to do this for you. I said, my point is, that's what I've been doing. I've been calling the places. I've been looking at them. I'm the one trying to set up. And you've looked on the, there for 2 seconds and you're telling me, oh, you're very emotional. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm about to be homeless.
Yeah.
And I'm disabled. And he went, oh, for good reason. Oh, you think? Yeah. They did finally agree that they would pay for my security deposit.
Mm-hmm. Wow, golly.
The full amount, and I wouldn't be required to pay it back. Okay. And they did finally agree that they would move me. Of course, by this time I had already, between my daughter paid my daughter probably paid close to $1,000 out of her own pocket, between airfare, coming out there, renting a U-Haul, physically moving as much as she could physically lift on her own, and probably was lifting things I didn't want her to lift on her own and kept telling her not to fill a U-Haul truck so we could reduce the amount I had to move to pay for a mover, so that out of my own pocket, I then paid another 300 or whatever, 350 or whatever for the move. Shh, girls. Sorry. Ups in the background. And you know, so I paid. Not only that, when I was driving my daughter back to the airport, I had my car broke down, and I had saved some money. My landlord didn't make me pay the rent the last month I was there because he wanted me to use it to move, right? He was trying to help me out. And I was saving it for a damage deposit because, of course, that's the one thing that was getting in the way. Well, that was out the window with the couple $100 I managed to save on my own because I'm driving home and my car breaks down. The air conditioning compressor had broken off from the bolts. So the bolts were broken off in my engine block. And that was another $970 that I had to pay out of my own pocket in the midst of all of this. They finally, so I paid for I borrowed some money. I paid for a hotel for 6 days on my own. Then my daughter paid for another 2 more days. And just the day after she paid for 2 more days, or it might have been the same day, I can't remember, all of a sudden my worker calls me. Because I had left a message saying, look, I ended up in a hotel. This is where I'm at, blah, blah, blah. I didn't ask them to pay for my hotel. I didn't ask. I just wanted to let them know and be transparent and say, this is where I am now. I'm not there anymore. I'm officially homeless. I managed to afford 6 days. I don't know how much more time I have. I don't know if I could, what I'm going to do after this, but this is where I am. Without asking for a single thing, just to update them. And then, he calls me the day after my daughter helps me pay for 2 more nights. And he says, oh, okay, so we're going to cover another 2 weeks of your hotel room. I had to pay out of pocket, like $1,000, between my daughter and I. I mean, that was,
so it's like after the fact, after
900. So I've already spent 970 and 970 in my car, 900 on a hotel room. I've had to borrow money to do some of this. I've managed to eat the whole time. And feed myself. It wasn't very much. Those Crave dinners were on sale for $2.90. There's about 2 or 3 of them I can actually eat that don't have actual gluten in them. That's what I was living on. 1 of those per day. That's how I was doing. And I had been doing it since I was still in my apartment when I was doing it. The only time I actually ate well was when my daughter was here, because she was feeding me 2 really good meals per day. But that's what I was living on, to try to, $3 meals that are about this big, right? And I've done, and so I've spent, for storage and moving, I've spent another $550. My income's $19.39. That includes my special diet allowance, because it's $17.85 plus my special diet allowance brings me to $19.39 a month. And I've already spent well in excess of that and managed to feed myself right up until about 6-7 days before I'm gonna, because I finally had I found this place about 2 days later. And there's this line, so you can normally call up the 24 emergency line, or you can do it online, and they'll e-transfer for emergency food, and they just automatically e-transfer you $21. No explanation, just I need food. And this is a Friday. this is a Friday on, you know what I mean? Like I'm asking, and I've just literally run out of food and money.
How easy is it that to do here in BC? Is like
you have to prove the reason why that you can't budget.
They make it almost impossible, right?
Well, okay, let me just wait.
Yeah, okay.
So normally it's only one day. $21 is only for one. That's all I'm expecting, right? Like I'm not expecting multiple days they're going to cover me. No. I'm just thinking it's going to be like normal, and I know I can stretch it because I've already been doing it. And anyway, all of a sudden I get this, oh, you have to call the line. You can't do it online. You have to call. So I call them, and they're like, oh yeah, you need to call your worker and get the worker to approve it before we can give you the.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I call my worker, and I get they're refusing me.
Oh,
because I should have planned and budgeted better.
Oh, of course.
More
budgeted better.
More gaslighting, yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
like how much more could I have squeezed?
When they're already down. Yeah.
How much more could I have squeezed?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Out of that situation without living in my car. And do you know what I mean? Like, and I was, it was the first time in the whole time I've known my worker that I've ever lost it on him. I lost it.
Oh,
I was like,
me of a time happened to me.
I was like, how dare you? I said, what kind of balls do you have? I said, I would put my budgeting skills up against yours or your supervisors any frickin' day of the week, because I don't think either one of you have the resourcefulness or industriousness to pull off what I've pulled off on what I have.
Yeah.
And I've managed to do this.
Wow. And
I've managed to make it this far. I've only got a few days left. And you want to tell me I didn't ask you for a single penny for food. I didn't even ask you to cover my hotel.
Yeah.
I literally, they offered it and I wasn't going to refuse it.
Well, no.
Literally, all I did was update them on my situation as per what they expect you to do. They expect you to report on updates of your situation. And that's exactly what I did. They responded to that update. They responded to that update by saying, we'll cover 2 weeks of your hotel. And I thanked them for it. And I was grateful for it. But I didn't actually ask them. I personally did not outright ask them for this.
They volunteered to basically provide you
right. There was an MLA had advocated for me before I had paid a week, but I paid a week and pocket, right? And I didn't ask them. They offered it. And then they had the nerve to tell me that I didn't budget properly or plan better because, you had 5 whole months to know you were going to move. And it's like, and I've been looking for 7. And the only reason to end this off, the only reason I found, and I'm sorry, I was trying to make it as short as possible because I've left a lot out.
No, that's perfectly fine. That's
but the only reason I found I did not find the place I'm living at through any traditional source. None of those rental sites found me. What happened is I have made some videos. I've tweeted and put them all over the Facebook pages of my premier and the Minister of Community and Social Services, telling them about documenting what I've been going through as I've been going through it. I've done 2 videos. I've also, and being angry at how I've been treated and the amount of, the amount of gaslighting and belittling and humiliation that they put me through over something I had no control over. It had nothing to do with me. It wasn't because I have any of the problems we normally associate stereotypically about homelessness. I'm not spending my money on booze. I'm not spending my money on getting wasted on illicit drugs. I'm not spending my, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm planning and spending and using food like I'm doing everything. And I have these amazing references. There was nothing in my personal life that should have put me in this situation. But they had to belittle me and humiliate me as much as humanly possible in order to even make it. And I tried all these sites, and what happened? So I did these videos. I went on, there's a wonderful podcast called The Breakdown Alberta with Nate Pike. And I'm a regular caller in there. I often give commentary on different things that are going on in our province politically when they do their political rundown of the week. And I and often what I'm speaking on is housing and disability and all the things I normally speak with you guys about too. Yeah. And I was calling in, and I decided to just I had asked him earlier before things got really tight to do something on the housing. And he said, a lot of people have asked me to do that, and they're working on something. But in the meantime, I started every Sunday I started calling in and giving updates and I had people waiting to hear my updates.
Oh, wow.
And I had people reach out to me. From there, I had help I had different kinds of help offered and given from various people. And I'm not necessarily talking financial. I'm just talking, but what ended up happening is the one video I did on my own, one of my friends, because she's not on Twitter, she saw it and she passed it on to somebody that's a Facebook friend of mine that I hadn't actually met in person, but somebody I knew quite well in other ways. And that person reached out to me, and that person happened to be a landlord up in Edmonton who also knew landlords here in Calgary and was on several public and private Facebook groups for landlords. I'm not a landlord. I can't be a part of those groups. So she and I put an ad together.
That's amazing.
And she put it out on her groups, and all of a sudden, like with her doing that, that's how I found this. Is all of a sudden I had like
yay
3 or 4 places to look at, and I had my choice.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I went from not even being able to get an application in a lot of times, or having applications ignored where they never even called us. They didn't even call my landlord in 7 months, not one, and over 3 dozen applications, not one person called my landlord or any of my other character references. Wow. And because this lovely lady helped me and did this for me and did it through avenues that I did not have access to, that's how. And she really, I mean, she knows we know each other. And she really sold like what a wonderful person how she feels about me as a person and stuff like that in the ad, and basically, that's how I got it. If she hadn't have done that, I don't know what I would have done.
So she heard you on the radio then, basically.
No, she actually heard me on a video I did personally. I did a Facebook Live video, and my friend shared it with her.
But kind of helped it, though. They kind of get that out there, and
well, I got, as I said, I had other help, and I had some temporary offers. I mean, but some of them were like, there was a lovely lady that has been very supportive of me that I know, but I don't really know. All the way, she lives 15 minutes outside of Camrose. But that's a long way. That's a long way from Calgary. You know what I mean? Like there's people that have but they were just too inaccessible for me to get to.
Yeah.
But you're raising an interesting point though, Cassandra, because I'm wondering, like, you have this bulletin board of all these landlords. Like, why doesn't the government know about these bulletin boards? Like, why aren't the governments plugged in and reaching out and saying, how many landlords out there have empty spaces right now where we can plug people in. Like, you know, like.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the shared accommodation I was seeing on Kijiji and Marketplace and all of those, you know, like a lot of them were really. I looked at one guy. I thought it was splitting a shared house because it was like I thought it was just him looking for one roommate, $1,100, and it was like one of those small new starter home type things. So they're kind of small. They have 2 or 3 bedrooms, but they're kind of small.
Yeah.
Right. And I go to look at that and I find out no.
But I mean, it's kind of
He's
silly.
Charging $1,100 for one room. The master pardon me. The master bedroom. Sorry. is being rented out by a guy and his son, and then another small bedroom by a younger girl, and then another bedroom, and then he's moved into the basement, and he wanted 1,100.
Wow.
Okay.
Just
right. I'm like, if I'm going to do a rooming situation, it's because I want to save some money.
But
it was more than what I was paying for rent before I had to move.
It's silly to me though. That, I mean, you have like a Facebook hosting page that has all these links to all these landlords. And yet, like, so Facebook can do it, but our governments can't do it.
Well, it's not Facebook. What it is
whatever.
We've created.
You know what I mean, though.
I'm an admin on a landlord-tenant group.
Okay.
And it's for landlords and tenants, and we mostly are talking about issues facing landlords. And in the landlord groups, they're actually not there to help each other look for rentals or find tenants.
I guess, but
they're actually there. Yeah. They're created.
Yeah.
They've been created to actually just help landlords navigate their rights and responsibilities.
But what I find
and troubleshoot problems they have with tenants.
Yeah.
Not to find tenants.
Interesting on that is that the government's kind of contradicting it, saying, "Oh well, have you not looked through this and looked through that? Maybe you've already exhausted all your avenues, right?"
Yeah. Because you even said you had a choice of 4 places, like all of a sudden. So obviously,
just because
the places were there.
Yeah. Well, it's not that. Okay, so I want to qualify this to make this important.
Okay.
Say goodbye.
Okay, Mary. Thanks for jumping in.
We're sorry that we didn't involve you more in the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you have to go.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Next time, Cassandra won't talk as much.
I'll have Mary on again. Don't worry.
Yeah, I really wanted to hear her perspective.
Yeah.
Like, because I saw her reactions and I was hearing her reactions and I'm like, I really want. I was trying to get.
I did want to interrupt you a couple times to get her involved, but we just didn't get.
But what I'll do, Cassandra, is I'll have Mary come on. Like we'll coordinate it, and then I'll have Mary come on, and we'll do a segment of feedback on what you've gone through. Right? We'll do.
I would love to hear her feedback. Like I would love, because I think it's important, because we need advocates to respond to these things.
Yeah, I'll get Neil. We'll make a segment called Cassandra's Journey from homelessness to housing, or something like that, and we'll have Mary come on, and
we could just do a part 2 of this.
Part 2 of it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's an important. I want to qualify the thing that happened. It wasn't just that she had it through. There's all these places, and she just had. The fact is, I've looked for shared accommodation, and I was getting nowhere with the shared accommodation. And one of the places that I had an opportunity. That was actually one of the places that I don't know if I actually looked at it. I was going, but anyway, I think it was an option, but I decided on this one. Was actually one that I had seen the ad for.
Oh.
And the difference was that this friend is a landlord that knew me, and she basically sold me. She sold me as a landlord to other landlords.
Right.
Oh.
Or
she sold me as a
tenant.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
tenant.
Yeah, she sold no, but her as a landlord
Oh,
was
I see.
selling me to
Sure.
other landlords
Yeah.
Yeah.
as a tenant, saying, I know this person, she's this amazingly wonderful person that's in this horrible situation, and is there anybody that has anything?
Kind of promoting you to other landlords of saying like, yeah, like
That was
place.
that was the difference. It wasn't that there were places, like there were so many places, like the place that I'm in actually was, I don't recall seeing it anywhere on any of the sites. So I'm not sure. I have to ask her about that. I have to ask my new roommate about that. So this was the place I'm in, because I was actually looking. I'm in this trailer park. One of my closest friends I've known from Vancouver. We're both from Vancouver. We've known each other for over 35 years, and her mom moved
few
into
years,
this,
yeah.
and her mom moved into, and her dad moved into this place 20 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Because I knew her mom from Vancouver too. And they bought and then when her dad passed, she came out, and she was in Ontario, and she came out here, and she stayed to help her mom. And we really wanted me to move closer. So I had actually looked on all these sites trying to find a place in this park. And then my friend said, hey, what about this lady? I got another listing. I got another one for you. It's in this trailer park in the northwest of Calgary. And I'm like, what's it called? And she said the name. And I'm like, oh my God, I really want to look at that place. And And so I fluked out, because this place I never would have found on.
Yeah.
Like I had been looking. I didn't see it unless it came up near the end. I'm not sure, because at some point I had to shift to actually just trying to get out of the place I was in, because I was the bailiffs were going to be coming soon. You know what I mean? And the landlord, my landlord, who I had an amazing relationship with, that I wanted to keep having an amazing relationship with after I moved, was starting to get a little upset. So my focus had switched. So I wasn't, in the last, week or so, I wasn't really looking at, as much. So maybe this was, I just hadn't seen it. So, but yeah, so I want to be clear about that. Like it's not like, a couple of these places were actually places that I had actually reached out to and seen. And I just
about that place. I am so happy for you.
Yeah,
I know. Great. And I can't, the lady that did it for me, I'm so grateful to her. I'm so grateful. This lovely lady outside of that lives outside of Camrose, she's also helped me. She helped me with an interest-free loan that I have to pay back, so I'm in even further debt. But without her, I wouldn't have been able to do the hotel. I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I and she did it interest-free, and I honestly wouldn't have been able to do it. And I also wouldn't have been able to, and without the other friend, I wouldn't have found a place, because on my own I was trying to sell myself. But it's a lot different when you've got somebody that's an actual landlord that knows you, that's selling you as a human being to other landlords
that believes in you and knows your circumstance and what you're going through. And amazingly, you got you this place. And I mean, to the person that got you this place, like thank you for doing this for Cassandra.
I never would have met I mean, my roommate's she's a retired teacher. She's a senior retired teacher. She's lovely. We have I've only been a few days. I feel like I've been here forever, because she's a very active, like she's hardly ever home, but when she is home, we have amazing conversions. Like,
I can imagine.
We can talk about a lot of things. She's just she's very interesting. She's traveled, and she's worked in places like Nunavik and in China and in like she's worked all over. It's she's quite a very well-rounded lady that
Yeah.
is very interesting to talk to, and and is just a wonderfully kind person, and so I've been very fortunate, and I see somebody. Does she have a comment? Does she want to talk about Durr?
Mary Jane is still here, but I don't know if her icon is still here. I'm not sure if she's actually there though. But if she is there, Mary Jean, if you're there, if you want to have a comment, there we go. She's coming back.
Photo appointment.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Can you hear?
Sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I just wanted to know if you had. I mean, you were laughing along at Cassandra's story, and we just wanted to hear your feedback of everything that's gone on today.
That's more than a minute.
What's that?
That's way more than a minute. I had so many things I want to say about her story. Oh my god, I wouldn't even know where to get started with a minute. I've only got a minute, so
okay.
Though, if you let me, I would like to put Jagmeet Singh's text message phone number on here and ask everyone to please ASAP ask him to do an emergency debate on Durr before Christmas. His phone number is 1-613-801-8210. Please do it.
Okay.
Go.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
We need to do a follow-up. We want to do a second part where we can have, because we want to hear your feedback on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Cassandra promises that you get to talk first the next time.
I won't take up the whole room next time.
Did you heard that one, Mary? You'll get
it can be the Mary Jean
Belanger show.
Yeah. No, definitely. We'll do a follow-up of part 2 of it. I mean, because that way, you can dive into it. I mean, there's so much to kind of unwrap with the story. I mean, it's, and I've heard this in my neighborhood too, Cassandra, is, and Mary, and anyone else watching this, the stories that people go through, and I want to hear people's stories. Just like Cassandra's, like what you've gone through, and
well, there's so much more I could even go on about there.
Oh yeah, and like part 2, I'd love to hear more of.
Like there's things I missed about. Like there's just so much. Like it's just, I mean, there's stats and there's there's things that they're not tracking. Like they're not tracking in Calgary how many people facing homelessness have disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it totally. And like for me to kind of unravel part of your story on the part 1 of it is the part that stood out the most to me is all the rhetoric, all the runaround BS that you had to go through because of the government not listening. Like it's like from my my opinion is that I took it as the government wasn't seriously listening to what you were saying, what you needed, and have you not?
Your poverty and homelessness is your fault.
Yeah, have you not looked at this place and looked at this place? And then, I guess the part that stood out is like, well, would you live there? And it's just, it doesn't make sense of why the workers talk down to their clients.
I mean, to be fair, my worker's been actually really kind. The only time I know when he's talking to me and it's not his words, that he's passing on the words of his supervisor, because there's a change in his tone and it almost sounds like it's like he goes from being the wonderful, compassionate human being I know him to be to being almost robotic in his response.
No, I mean, maybe it was the other person that you were referring to. Maybe not your worker, the person that you were referring to before. Is that she was talking down of kind of looking down on you like you're a little kid.
Well, it's not just that. This goes up. There's a saying my dad used to say: if the top isn't right, nothing else is.
Right.
And the fact is, I was getting that response from the minister's office themselves.
Oh, yeah. See, so
even before talking to the supervisor with AISH, like trying to explain to the minister's to that woman in the minister's office, and she's yelling over me. Like,
well, that's what I mean. Like, it's like someone yelling at you is not going to help the situation. It's just going to escalate things more worse.
Well, she's talking over me, throwing numbers that mean nothing, that aren't actually. And I should say, I do want to, as far as that, there's something very important about that.
Okay.
In my journey of calling all these 211s and getting follow-up and phoning all these places I described, I started asking the different agencies and that deal with I started asking them. I'm like, well, what about this money that Minister Nixon said that they're giving to this, or what about the money they're giving to that or that? And the response every single time from that frontline worker on the phone, every single time, was hysterical laughter.
Oh,
man.
Not at me.
Wow.
Not at me. Hysterical laughter at the idea that this money is coming, because normally when a government is going to give money to agencies for different, before they've ever made an announcement, they've already been working with those agencies on how to best provide, or telling them how, and they've got nothing. They haven't got the money, but they didn't even get any of that. They got the same thing everybody else got. Lip service and a press conference to give everybody a lot of lip service about what they're doing, but they actually haven't put any money at it. So none of these agencies have gotten the money, and nobody from the ministry has reached out to them to actually talk to them and say, oh, we're going to do this press release because we want to help with this situation.
They can start doing a photo op and all the announcement, but where's all the good?
It's just so they can. It's almost like it's just so they can sit there and say, "Oh, look what we've done."
Yeah.
But they actually haven't actually done it.
Hey, look what we did.
Yeah, they haven't actually done it, and we don't know if they're ever going to do it or when they're going to do it.
But in Cassandra, in BC, like maybe Alberta could borrow the new computer system that we're going to be getting in for the government. It's going to be the state-of-the-art computer system. It's going to be able to handle everything, but in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. They can't. Well, where was I? I was on something. I got to participate in some consultation with one of our favorite disability advocacy organizations to do with I think that. Oh no. Maybe it was another podcast I was on. I think it was a podcast. But somebody somewhere in this journey of me trying to advocate, I don't know where it was. I honestly can't remember. I'm trying to rack my brain. But somebody asked me about I'm losing it. About it was to do with why in BC we don't understand why in BC, with the cost of living so much higher, why they get so little. And I mean, something was going on where I just couldn't get into it. But I remember, like, in my head going, oh, could I tell you a story? Right? If you only knew the half of it, it's because they say their computer system isn't update can't handle a bigger payment.
It can't handle big payments.
Yeah.
I remember the meeting I had on that. I just, gosh,
that to me, you know what? I don't care if they were on a 30 or a 20 year, a 20-year-old system that still operated on DOS, they could handle a bigger payment. It's just programming.
You just put a new string in there. You put a new string. This string equals that.
It's not hard.
It's just programming. The idea that the computer is
broken. Well, here's the thing. If that was the case, it can't handle big payments. Then how come the MLAs and MPs and MPPs?
Yeah, how do you get
these big giant payments?
I know. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, how do you make payments to the ministry? To the ministries with their budgets?
Print off the giant checks. Yeah. We got a comment from Moringa, Ottawa.
Hello, Moringa.
And I'm assuming maybe I'm not sure, but it says loving Weatherman's unicorn, or I like Weatherman's unicorn. By the way,
my unicorn right behind me. Yeah, I know it's hiding right there. And just keeping an ear out, saying, "Hey, where can we change policies?" But the policies, Moringa, the thing is that the government says it's equal across the board, because one sector is like, it needs to equal to everywhere. It's like Moringa. It's like I always talk about the bus pass in BC, and I'm just going to quickly do it, like but 20 seconds. I'm going to mention this. So BC Disabled had a bus pass all the way up until 2016. Okay. Then the government took it away. Why? Because, there was just a small little handful of people, 5 or 6 people, probably 6 people.
Literally 5 or 6.
Literally.
We're not even like saying, it's not for hyperbole. It was literally 5 or 6 people.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like the tiny few people in a rural area of BC, and those people in the rural BC didn't have a conventional transit system. They used Handy Dart or a dial-a-ride, right? They'd come by and a shuttle bus pick them up. Well, those people complain. They just why should the people in the urban area have access to transit?
Sorry, I'm making funny faces because I'm thinking.
And those people in the rural area, they got a special transportation subsidy, so they got a lump sum payment. They could use it to buy insurance, car insurance. They could buy a whole bunch of groceries. They could go to Costco or whatever. And then the government says, hey, you know what? We're going to change the whole system because a few people wanted it.
Because 5 or 6 people said.
Yeah, because 5 people said. Seniors
do you know what? Do you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about transportation, it reminds me of one of my issues. I can't take the bus. So bus pass doesn't help me. Mm-hmm. And I've been promoting something, and I'm going to keep pushing it. Everybody keeps talking. The market basket, when the Fraser Institute is telling you, of all places, of all the think tanks, when the Fraser Institute is saying the market basket measure does not adequately measure poverty.
Mm-hmm. There's a huge problem there then.
There's a huge problem because they tend to be, they're very fiscal. They tend to be more fiscally conservative and they're saying it's not enough. And this is for an able-bodied, and I am going to go back. The real test of poverty, there's something called a living wage calculation. Mm-hmm. There are things in the market basket measure that the market basket measure does not include as essentials, but for a lot of people, they are essentials. And if you're a person with disabilities, they're definitely essentials. They're definitely essential basic needs, but they're not included in the market basket measure. Not to mention the market basket measure is measuring what the level of poverty is for an able-bodied person.
Totally. And also, I believe
I keep hearing people going on about, we just want the poverty line. Well, if you say that, what you're going to get is what the federal government has decided is the measurement of poverty, which is the market basket measure. That's what you're not going to get more than that. And the real measure of poverty is, if you look at the living wage calculation, the living wage calculation includes all those basic needs that are excluded under the market basket measure.
Like housing's not even incled in the
well, it is. They say it is, but we all know if we look at what they measure, the market basket measure is supposed to take into housing, but when you look at the price of rent, and the price of rents are more than what the market basket measure of the poverty line is, then obviously it isn't taking into account. Even though they're telling us it is.
Otherwise,
so that's why it's flawed. And that was even the Fraser Institute has picked up on stuff. So if the Fraser Institute can acknowledge that, of all places, then there's something wrong. They need to base it on a livable income. And we have a mutual friend that likes to say, well, it doesn't cost as much if you're to say, you don't need as much money to get around. If it costs me more. I was making 65 grand a year 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In today's dollars, that would be 100. I would be struggling to pay for things if I was still making that, but I am making a quarter of that a year.
Yeah.
And I'm, do you know what I mean? So this idea that if you're a working person, you're paying out of pocket for things that because I'm disabled and sitting at home, I'm not paying for, that's bull. I still pay the same for transportation as I did when I was working.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I still pay the same for rent as when I was working. I still pay the same for food as when I was working. I still have, do you know what I mean? I still travel so this idea that because if you're not working, it doesn't cost you the same. And then when you add the cost of disability on top of that,
oh yeah, that's a huge.
That's ridiculous. It costs me more if I was to fulfill my needs without even being comfortable, just filling my needs.
Yeah. It's the crip tax, right?
I would need more than what I did before I became disabled. So don't tell me that the livable wage calculation is the true measure of poverty.
Yeah, it's not.
If you're not making an income that's based on that calculation, you are living in poverty because you are not making your basic needs. And that's for an able-bodied person.
When the basic amounts aren't being met, then we got a huge fundamental problem across our nation.
Well, and so we were even, the minimum wage, there's been all kinds of calculations. Our minimum wage does not sustain you because
it doesn't.
Because a livable wage is like the living wage. The minimum wage in most places now is hanging around $15 an hour.
Well, in Vancouver,
the livable income or the livable wage is sitting around $22 to $25 an hour, depending on where you live.
Yeah, in Vancouver, it's like 25. I think Victoria's around there saying about 24, 25 also. Fraser Valley, it's up there, which the stats show, which I think is kind of misleading for the Fraser Valley because they're saying, oh, well, the cost of living is not as high. I could differ with that. It's high. They're saying it should be like 20.
Yeah, it is high because you have to commute
so
4 times as far and heavier traffic in the roads. I'm sorry.
It should be
just
like
because being nestled in.
Yeah.
Just because of being nestled into the mountains the way you are, like the commute, they can't build the kind of roads they can build out here.
We did a short podcast just yesterday, Brent, and I made the comment that what I don't like, aside from what you said, Cassandra, about the livable wage thing, is what I don't like is just the fact that the governments don't see people with disabilities as economy drivers. Like they think if God forbid we give them more money because then they'll have more money to invest in the economy. We can't have that.
Well,
no.
Can I tell you
God
something
forbid.
Too?
Yeah, go for it.
Back to the how back to the whole housing thing. Like honestly, like I'm trying to find. Oh God, I lost it. What did my brain just do?
Happens to me all the time.
I was going to say something about, it was something about the housing situation and to do with the, I'll keep talking. I'll remember it.
It'll come back. No, but that was the point I was making is it just bugs me. It's like, well, I mean, why should we give you more money? Because if we give you more money, you're only going to put it back in the economy, and we can't have that.
No, we can't have that.
We can't have more money in the economy. That'd be terrible.
We can't.
That's what I was going to say.
More money? No. I
mean, in regards to my housing situation, like when he's saying there's lots of places,
and
he's saying to me, And he's saying, well, we won't pay for this unless it's your move, unless it's accessible. And he's got a doctor's note where my doctor's saying, if she tries to move or lift boxes, it's going to irreversibly and extremely damage her health permanently. And which is the criteria. And they're like, oh, but it has to be accessible to you. And it's like the other, to find the only places that are like to live in an accessible, the most accessible place. I don't need wide doors or anything right now. I can manage. I just need no stairs. What I'm looking, if I want to rent myself like a 1-bedroom apartment that's accessible with an elevator, right? All I need. We're looking at $1,700 a month and up, and I'm only getting $1,785 plus a special diet allowance because of my celiac and other things. So how, like, it, you know, like you're telling me I have to find an accessible, but there are no accessible places that don't take up my whole paycheck.
Yeah, you see, there should be enough to cover disabled for a rent. The rents are high, okay, so there should be enough just to cover the rents, that high rent, and then of course,
like like if I can afford I should be able to afford to pay $1,700-1,800 to get myself into just a basic 1-bedroom. Because I didn't make the market.
Exactly,
that's what the market is. And be able to pay for my extra costs for transportation and food. We
didn't start the fire. It was always burning.
Right? I mean, that's the big part of it. We've got places like, I keep going on, one of the places 55 plus, right? It's not a retirement community. It's not a retirement community. It doesn't have meals. It doesn't have social programs. It doesn't have, no, it's just an apartment building. They're normal sized 1-bedrooms, you know, or just in and around 500 square feet, give or take. And they put luxury in the name, but I've seen some places that aren't calling themselves luxury that look about just as nice. They both got granite countertops and modern appliances. I don't know. Just because, and they are advertising constantly. I'm being bombarded with advertisements on Facebook and Google from this Wellings place going, come live with us. Come live with us. Well, I don't know. Maybe the reason nobody's coming to live with you is that 1-bedroom apartment I was talking about. It's just a handful of dollars short of $4,000 a month.
Wow.
And those are sitting empty because they got luxury in the name. And there's people like me that really need a place to live, and we can't get one. And they're wondering why people won't
be allowed, automatically be allowed to live where we want to live. See, the problem I have with the governments, they say, well, we're building stuff under their umbrella, which I mean, it's fine. We need housing. I get it. Like, we have to have housing, but there's such a long waiting list, and it's all under subsidized housing. So the problem is that now you got so much government red tape, bureaucratic stuff. So now, say all of a sudden someone needs housing, like, so say Sonia and myself, we need to have cheaper housing. Oh, well, we can put you on a waiting list of BC Housing. Well, what they're saying is there's a long waiting list.
10 years later.
Oh, it's at least 20 plus years
20
now.
plus years now, yeah.
Yeah, they're saying it's unlimited now because there's no housing. But here's the problem. It's also they're taking families first. And it's not based on health conditions anymore. I know we asked that.
We've always had it. Like, I'll tell you, we've always, I mean, we don't want children on the street.
No.
Okay. And I think I want to, and that's why I always emphasize that it's not about that we don't want to house families. But the problem is you need to build enough housing so that you're not excluding people with disabilities and other people that also should not, like, how, you know, how tenable is it that you're so afraid? One of the reasons why governments house families first, it's not just because children shouldn't, it's because it would be awfully embarrassing if all of a sudden you had a situation with a lot of homeless children on the street, right, with their parents.
But
why aren't they embarrassed? Why aren't they embarrassed at having people that are disabled through no fault of their own out on the street? Why aren't you embarrassed by that? Why aren't you embarrassed that an overwhelming amount of the homeless population has physical, mental, or other disabilities, sometimes that they were born with, and that is what is led to homelessness, not addiction. A lot of people become addicted after, because if you're sleeping out in the elements in the middle of winter, especially in a place like Calgary or Toronto or Calgary, where it can dip below minus 20, 30, 40, right? You know, a good way to keep warm? Get high. So don't tell me homelessness often leads to addiction, because you're trying to survive in the elements, and you're trying, and it's, do you know what I mean? So if you've got disabilities on top of it, like we've got people with literal physical disabilities that are homeless.
I know.
And why is that not embarrassing to governments? Why is that not just as embarrassing as having children out in the streets?
Yeah.
See, the way I look at it too, Cassandra, is that, you know, to keep people housed, the disabled housed, or anyone housed, is that, okay, so they need to move for no fault of their own. They need to relocate somewhere. Now the rents are so high. Okay, but you want cheaper housing?
I can't afford to be, they're like, why don't you move closer to family?
I
can't afford to live in the place. I can't. My family is in Vancouver. I cannot afford. How am I, if I'm making $19.39 a month and I can't find a place to live in Calgary where the rents are cheaper, I can't find a place to live where the rents are cheaper. How am I going to live on $500 or $600 less a month?
Totally.
When the rents are $1,000 more a month?
Oh yeah, easily.
Like, where am I going to live? My daughter and son-in-law, they're in a tiny apartment with 2 children. They had to move and ended up in an even smaller apartment. Like, there's no place for me there. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they can't even, they would take me in. They would they would have even loved to take my mom in, but they don't have the room, and they can't afford to find a place there.
Had some unicorn math there, Cassandra. I call that unicorn math when it's like, you know.
Right? Like how am I supposed to do that? And how are we, like, it just frustrates me, because
and all I hear from governments is that, oh well, there's more to do. There's more.
No, but they, you know, here's the thing. Like, I'm gonna go back to the mayor. Like, I was kind of, because when I wrote this letter to the mayor about it, the subject line was, why just families? Because winter is coming in Calgary, and you're gonna open up city land,
sounds
put
like
up temporary
Game of Thrones. Winter is coming.
Keep that up for me.
Yeah, I know. But put up temporary modular housing, which, by the way, is something I've said numerous times they should do to deal with the housing situation.
Gosh.
So it's like somebody heard me, but you decided to do it just for families. And my whole point is, and I put out stats. I didn't just put out quote the stats. I cited the sources for those stats in my letter to the mayor, saying, like, single people are 2 times as single person households 2 times as likely to be in more than 2 times as likely to be in core housing need. And after saying all of that and using my story to advocate, not just for myself, but for, if I'm having this situation with my resourcefulness, with what are people that don't have all of that doing? And
Yeah,
and I'm trying to advocate. And you know what they said? That you know what the first reply was?
Mhm.
Did you try calling 211?
Oh, you got to be kidding me. That's terrible.
The same, and I'm pretty sure I said in my letter I called to if not, I have some videos and some podcasts you can listen to when I talk about it.
It's like out of touch, eh? I mean, like
and I said to her, I said, excuse me, I said, have I called? I said, I've called them. They even do scheduled callbacks with me. I go, my whole point is that you offered it, you're doing something I've been advocating for,
that they already
which
know,
is doing these temporary modular houses. I said, but you're just doing them for families when single person households, at the neglect of single person households who are more than 2 times as likely to be in core housing need. And most of the people in the tent cities are single person households.
Yeah, it's almost, it's like those, wow, like look what we're doing, like splashing
right
it out.
I said, that's my point. And I pushed it, like I pushed it on her, I pushed it on 2 other city councilors. I keep pushing it, and I actually missed, I was supposed to have a meeting with another city councilor about a project I wanted to get off the ground, but what happened, I missed it because my facing homelessness ended up spiraling out of control, and I actually just missed the meeting because I was just in too much hardship at that point, because it had been set up much earlier. And you know, the thing is, so I've been pushing this on MLAs. I've phoned MLAs offices, I've phoned MPs offices. Like I have gone to every level of government and said, look, this is not like, this is great. Like, okay, we need more housing, and you're building more housing, but we have a housing emergency that needs addressing today. What are you doing to address, like, temporary? I said this to the federal government, temporary modular homes, you can throw up and house people.
Yeah, exactly.
So why are we doing it just for families and not addressing the immediate housing situation, which is overwhelmingly made up of single person households and households with disabilities?
It's like just putting a Band-Aid over the problem. Like they have to have a permanent solution to this. You know, they're
working on the permanent one, but we need we need a short-term interim solution to address the immediate housing need. Instead of people lose their limbs out here, people get their digits, they lose them to frostbite in the winter. People that weren't disabled that end up homeless end up disabled from trying to sleep out in the elements because the shelters are full and hard to get into.
And then they try to get into other businesses and to say, you know, and then they say, oh, you're homeless. No, you need to go. Like, and then, you know, people trying to just find a warm place that they could just go to. I mean, to be in no, you can't be here. You can't be there. And they just keep shifting them.
There's no place. And I mean, Edmonton used to have Edmonton used to keep, like, their city center mall when I was living up there. It used to be like they had security on, and all the store shops had, you know, security, door, you know, like doors that rolled down and stuff. But the mall itself was open 24 hours a day. Do you know why? So people could keep warm in the winter. They also allowed them in bus shelters because we had heated bus shelters up there. And it was to keep people from freezing to death. And they had, do you know, they shut all that down. You can't, they shut it all down. In Edmonton, where minus 30 without the windshield is regular in the
Why would they shut it down? Like, who made that decision?
You know, somebody somewhere, some NIMBY complained about the home. You know what I mean? There are people that are just more worried because they feel threatened by the homeless rather than just feeling like, maybe it saved, you know, like,
if they wanted to shut it down, then they should have maybe provided them housing then? Like, provide housing.
Well, that's right. Like, there's things, housing, you know, supportive housing with wraparound services, like a lot of these people need. But the way that was like 20 years ago.
Oh, I know, but
now. A lot of these people that are ending up homeless are not people that need wraparound supports. They just literally,
they just
like
want
myself, I
go
don't
home.
need wraparound supports.
No.
All I need is a
Just
home,
a home,
and an
a
income,
home.
and I'm good.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
need, I'm not hard to house. I don't have, you don't have to treat my addiction. You
Yeah.
don't have to teach
Yeah.
me basic life skills. I
Yeah.
just need a home.
Mhm.
And more people like me. I mean, if you've got working households with two working incomes that are living in hotels they can barely afford and living in campgrounds because they can't find an apartment
Yep. We
that
got
they can afford, how are
Oh.
people that are
a huge
on lower incomes or minimum, how are they getting by?
They're not.
Mhm.
They're not
No,
getting
that's your homeless pop. That's what's growing the homeless situation. And so
We're approaching.
anyway,
We've kind of blown past an hour, so we're almost 20 minutes shy of
okay, well,
2 hours. So we should
Yeah.
start wrapping up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, we'll do the.
we could
I'll
do a part
our-
2.
Yeah. We'll do our-
I know I do the hey I did better. Look, this
You
is
did.
much better. We didn't do the full. We didn't go over the 2 hours this time.
There you go.
Yeah. Hearing your story though, Sandra. I mean, the first part of it. I mean, it's just you went through so much, just trauma and agonizing, agonizations, frustrations, fear, the fear of being homeless again. From when you were a youth, that causes like a kind of triggers like a PTSD, right? It's like going through re-traumatization, and the fear of just going, oh no, like this is happening, and hearing your story of it reminds me of a time that what I had gone through, just briefly. Thank God, like Sonia and myself had gone. We had a hotel we had gone to. I struck a deal with the hotel, and I got it for $75, including tax, a night. The going rate was like $140 a night. I got it for $75, including tax. And they said, how long? And it was like a couple of days, and okay, well, we'll see what happens, and kept extending it. And then it finally got to a point where the hotel manager said, Brent, could you pay us a flat rate? If you pay us a flat rate, and I said, well, how much? $1,500. What? For a whole month, including tax. If you pay us cash, like a flat rate, I'll include the GST. I'll incorporate it all into the rate, and we'll just call it a manager's discount. Like he had ways of working it into the tax measures that he still the PST and GST, but you as a consumer, you wouldn't be paying more. And he said, so don't worry, like I can give you a receipt if you need to give it to the government. I go, just tell the government to give you $1,500 for your shelter, okay? And I said, shelter. And he goes, I don't like the word shelter. I go, either do I. And that was then.
Yeah.
I said, I don't like the word. He goes, they need to be providing both of you enough money to pay for these rents. And rents are going to be going up. And that was then. And he knew.
I
He
know.
said, they're going up. And I goes, why are they only giving you $375 for your shelter? And I went, wow. I said, there's no way the government's going to give us $1,500. So then how many more days? Let me look at your portfolio. Okay, you've got, and again, when you said 8 days, we had 8 days to go. I said, I've only got 8 days of revenue to keep this going. After that, I don't know. So we were feared that we were going around everywhere looking for a place. We couldn't find it. Oh, well, you can come and see the place end of the month or the beginning of the month. And we were staying at a hotel. And I said, to the one lady, I said, like, yeah, we liked the place, but she said, well, come and see me then. And finally, that's when we went to Nanaimo. Like, we just up and like we were so sad. Like, I remember going to a storage locker. We had our stuff in storage, and I was just bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
Because I was so sad. Like, I was like, no, like, I don't want to do this. And then my story was that, as you know, I've told my story before. We made our way back to Langley. It was like, yay, we're now back. We got a new place. And the premier at the time, he was giving a transportation announcement saying, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. SkyTrain's going to be coming. Look at all these new places getting built. And he saw us. But Sonia, she saw the ad, and she was, we got to go see John. We got to go see John. What? No, he's down here. He's down at Douglas Park. He's giving an announcement. I'm like, Okay, Sonia, hang on. So she booted down there, and it's a good, how long is it? About 14-minute walk down there.
10 minutes.
We got there in 10 minutes. We got there in 10 minutes.
It never ran so fast.
It never ran so fast. I tell you, we got down there, and he was so excited to see us, but he was shocked. He was like, "What? Why are you guys here?" We found a place. He says, careful with those corporate landlords, because some of them can be really shady. No, John, don't worry. We found a good place. Okay, well, that's fine. You found a good place. And moral of the story is we lost our place, a brand new place we saw getting built. And I said, wouldn't it be nice to live in a brand new place? Finally, we could call a place we can call home. It didn't work out that way. The corporate management, they had underlying issue of getting people out so they could jack up the rent, make more money because they want to make their commission. And it's all about greed, right? And we had a good manager when we got in it. Like, she took over, a good manager. She was awesome. What I found out, Cassandra, is that since we left, there's been four management since we've left. They've taken over the building. Like, wow. And the rent, hey, get this. The place that we were renting is now going for $2,650.
I know, it's
the same unit, the same unit, and the dishwasher.
It's of no. I don't even know how people.
I don't know how they can do it.
I don't know how people manage but you know what's scary, and I'll leave it on the.
Yeah.
I was going through this, so my daughter's mother-in-law, who I just love, her and I were talking, and I was telling her, my story and stuff like that, what's been going on. And after hearing it, she actually said, Cassandra, she goes, I actually think it would be easier for you to find a place here in BC. On PW, do you know what I mean? Like, she's on PWD.
Yeah.
And she thought it would be easier for me to find, like that's how, but just when I told her everything, like the amount of people looking at places, because I mean, part of it seems to be who you know.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. And they know people, but yeah, it's troubling that a big part of especially Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, a big part of the problem is you're nestled into the mountains, and in Vancouver proper, they've run out of land to build new housing, so they have to, all they can do is tear down and build up in Vancouver proper.
Well, actually, MJ just made a really good point in chat. He says they should convert office space to housing.
Well, that's what they're doing here in Calgary, but it's the problem is, if the way hot office space, when you're talking about those towers and stuff, this is where we've run into in Calgary.
Retrofits.
When you have, the plumbing, when they're building the plumbing and everything is built into those for how it's going to be, and they're not built, and so it gets really expensive is actually building. All of a sudden you're having like 30, 20, 30 individual bathrooms on a floor, right?
That's true. That's true,
and kitchen. Yeah. And they're still doing it. Like, they've been doing it, and they've kind of figured it out, but it's been slower than I think a lot of people realized.
Well, because they got retrofit all the piping, they got extended.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And build stuff in that was actually like, because when they're building a new building, they're building it inside the guts and the infrastructure as they're building it up. So to add it after is
MJ
more
also says there's empty malls, which is true. You can
there we go.
You can convert a mall.
Well, well, what they did with remember Woodward's?
Yeah.
Remember Woodward's?
Yeah.
That's what they did with Woodward's, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes, they did. They did. And there's so much housing that's needed, and you actually missed the part. I'm not sure if you actually saw the one podcast, though, Cassandra, is that I told the story about some people that Sonia and I know that had moved to Victoria. His mother lives in actually our building. So they moved here they had moved here. Had, past tense now. They had moved here 2 years ago from Winnipeg to BC, to Victoria. We got to know them. And his mother lives here, and unfortunately, due to health reasons, she had seizures. She didn't have seizures when as much, not very often at all with her disability. Yeah, she has autism, and she won't mind me talking about this because they're going to come onto the show one day and actually talk about their disability. But a little pre background information on it is they both are autistic. They're awesome people, really wonderful people. They mean well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she had a lot of seizures. He didn't. She did. And I guess to her epilepsy too. Like it's yeah. So anyway, when she came out to Victoria, they noticed that it kept escalating more and more and more. They decided that okay, like they're gonna have to reevaluate their situation. They were gonna move back to Winnipeg. They really didn't want to, so they stuck it out. They said, you know what, we're gonna stay. I said okay. They went back on a little holiday to visit their friend in Winnipeg, and they came back. And 2 days after they came back, she had a seizure that lasted 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. They freaked. They were very upset. And we hadn't heard from them because they said they were going to let us know. And when they got back, I hadn't heard. And I figured, well, I'm not going to bug them. They need this maybe some time to themselves. Like when they got back, they'll message me when they can. Well, they hadn't messaged me because they had taken her to the hospital.
Oh.
And they had done tests on her and determined it was environmental. And because when she moved here into Victoria, if it was the Lower Mainland, it's not as bad in the Fraser Valley. But in Victoria, for some reason, it affected her, I don't know, somehow. And the specialist determined that it's environmental. And they said that they had to make a very quick decision. Unfortunately, sacrifice moving. And they also looked at it too, that's health reasons.
Yeah.
They also looked at it as from the financial point of view, is that they could not afford to find another place in Victoria because now they have a little girl. They have a little girl, and she's like just over a year.
Oh, hold on a minute. Hold on 2 seconds.
Okay. I'll come right back to that as soon as she's ready. For anyone watching on this, I'm just telling Cassandra the story about some people from Winnipeg that Sonia and I met, and their journey through their disability and rates. Oh, I can't hear you, Cassandra.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I wasn't talking to you.
Yeah, no problem.
I was talking to my roommate. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh.
I was gonna cook. She's like, "Oh, she want me to cook some pork," and I was gonna cook it when we got off of here.
Oh, okay.
And then she just came and picked it up. And I'm like, "Oh, you're eating out? Oh, okay. Kind of have to cook now."
So yeah, right on. So just to kind of summarize their situation. So now they have a little girl. They went after they got here. Now she's a year and 4 months, Sonia, something like that. A year and 4 months. Yeah, Jason, Stephanie, I'm sorry if I get the time off.
Yeah.
On that. But anyway, she's a little cutie. She's a little cutie though. Now they need another bigger place. They looked around. 20.
There was a cutie in the background that I was trying to show you.
It was around $2,600 to $2,800 for another room, 2-bedroom for them.
Okay.
They were paying $1,550. They were paying $1,550 for a 1-bedroom, $2,800 for a 2-bedroom, and that's an old place that they were looking at. A newer place was over $3,000 in Victoria. I said to them, "Have you looked in the Lower Mainland?" They said no. I mean, it would cost them too much to go over. So that's their story. They're going to tell more about their story when I have them on. But here's the kicker on it, though. I asked them all, "How are you going to move your stuff?"
Right.
Well, they hadn't. Well, they had kind of looked into it, but they got an earful from the government, run around BS, and I said, of course. So they gave all their stuff to their neighbor. Their neighbor was going to be moving,
right?
So they gave the majority of their stuff to their neighbor. Their neighbor is going to now deal with it, whatever they're going to do with it. I helped them and move some tables and stuff. Sonia and I helped them move some stuff as we could. Sonia couldn't do too much because she can't do a lot of lifting at all. due to her health. I can't do a lot of lifting because of my back.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I know. I mean, that's what drove me nuts about.
But here's the thing about the ministry, though. Like, I looked into it because I didn't know too much about the moving supplement. I said, so here's the thing, you guys. To move your stuff, I don't think the ministry is going to pay for it anyway. Especially going all the way to Manitoba, you might as well just sell your stuff or get rid of it. There's no way they're going to pay for all that move. But I said, even if it was local, they still wouldn't move you. What? Nope.
Unless you have a child.
Oh yeah, but here's when
I was a single parent out in BC,
they changed all that. They changed all that. They've changed that.
Oh, really?
They changed the terminology. You're going to lose it on this one, Cassandra. It used to be that you could move if you found suitable housing. Okay, they've now changed the terminology. If it was for health reasons, they would move you. Oh yeah, Sonia had that, so they would move it. You had to be closer to a doctor or physician specialist, whatever it may be, right? They took that out. Now they've changed it. Also, now I'm really advocating hard on them on this because and Sheila Malcolm.
Well, when in Alberta, so by the way, here in Alberta, even under this government, if I'm moving for a job, if I am moving for health reasons or for any kind of like better support from better support, like a better support network of family or friends, then they will move me.
Oh yeah, no. In BC, they'll do it for that part too. They'll do it for that part if you could better your outcome. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But here's the kicker that you're gonna be like, what? Oh, okay. They changed the terminology now where if your rent has been, and Neil's going to be like, oh my God. And Neil knows this part already. If your rent has been substantially reduced. You tell me anywhere in Canada that your rent is substantially reduced.
That's like changing our security deposit that they'll give you to $380 a month.
Yeah.
In what planet?
Yeah.
Can you get away with? The only place my security deposit is going to be anywhere near $380 a month is if it's in Calgary housing, but we don't have enough Calgary housing units.
Same as here.
So where am I going to go?
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, that's just such utter bull.
Yeah, and that's the part I tell the government all that when I do my podcast or when I met in person too. I said people should be able to live where they want to live. So we live in market housing. Well, we want to keep living in market housing. Oh, wow, you want to live in subsidized housing? Really? Well, there's too many barriers. And why should you? Why should you have to or want to?
Well, I'll tell you something, though. I've seen something in BC, and I've literally seen it. Like when my mom, when we first were looking, I was looking at places because she was resistant to going to retirement community. I like there were new places like in Coquitlam, like one block behind my mom, the next one block over. It's the exact same address, one street over.
Oh wow! Okay.
They just opened a whole new building with of subsidized housing, public housing through BC Housing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's I know of actual. We don't have that here. Like there at least there are brand new there are brand new buildings that have gone up just in the last year or two ready to rent. We don't have that here.
I wonder if they'll rent for $500 a month.
I wonder.
Well, no, it's based on it's geared to income. It's based on 30% of your
RGI,
income.
Yeah. But it's probably based on household income. But here's the problem: is that if you got two people on separate incomes in a household, they won't do it. It has to be based on household income, one income.
No.
Here in BC, it is.
No, I just looked it up. I was looking it into it just from but I was looking it up. I was reading the criteria.
Anyway, let's save this discussion for part 2 because
sorry, because we could go on forever, and I should go.
We are getting to 3. Oh, it actually is 3:00 now, and I gotta punch out. It's my wife's birthday, so I gotta make sure I punch out early.
Yes, right. Tell her happy birthday.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Now everybody on the podcast knows. Whoops.
Everyone knows.
Yeah. I just doxed myself and that way.
No,
you know, it's funny. I've met your son briefly. I've never seen your wife on any time.
Yeah.
Does she go off and hide when we
she basically at work, or she's hiding. Yeah.
Or she's hiding.
Okay.
Work, yeah.
I have her for 5 seconds on one video. Where she doesn't even know that I have her on a video. There's one video I have. If you go to the in the car, I have that in the car playlist.
Oh, right.
And there's that one that I go to. It's a Harrison Hot Springs. So anybody can look that up. There's a Harrison Hot Springs in the car playlist. If you look up Harrison Hot Springs, my wife is on video for like 5 seconds. I have her like waving. That's it.
Okay. Well, it's been lovely, guys. I know we all get so. I know it's not just me it's
so we get very passionate with the topic of kind of breaking down of where the problems are also with and I mean we're going to dive more into this in the second part for sure, and we'll make sure that we allow get Neil to schedule.
We'll make sure that Mary Jean gets a chance to talk too.
We need to. She needs to. Honestly, I was watching her expressions the whole time. I really want to know what she has to say.
It was like the gallery, and it was like all this animated facial expressions.
I know.
It was great.
I know, but it gets you curious. Like, we really need. We need her to weigh in.
Yeah.
And I have to apologize to her again, but I do have to sign off now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I've gone over time for myself as well. I had other things I needed to do, so.
It's been great having you on, and I look forward to the next part 2.
So are we just gonna roll over into next week?
I'm looking forward to open mic.
Yeah. Are we doing that on Friday, or what are we doing?
You know what? We can actually.
We didn't actually decide that. We didn't decide that.
Yeah, no.
I'm just saying whenever it comes, I'm not putting any pressure.
Yeah.
Friday.
Okay.
No open mic. Do this on Friday.
Okay.
I thought we were going to do it till the 22nd, or changing that.
Not sure.
22nd.
Well, you originally weren't going to be available for this Friday, but I think you're okay.
Are you not available this Friday, Cassandra?
I just thought that there was going to be a delay in the month, but I can be available.
Okay. Yeah, we can do this Friday because
you weren't going to be around, so originally, right?
Brent wasn't going to be around.
Wasn't going to be around.
I wasn't going to be around originally, but I'm actually around right now. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Anyway,
okay.
Thanks for tuning in.
Good night, guys.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and have a great day.